Hello, my name is Justin Whitty, and I am the curator and director of the Cleve Carney Museum of Art. I want to welcome you today to the next installment of our Visiting Artist series. Today we'll be hearing from the artist, writer, and actor Tony Fitzpatrick. Tony, who's shown his work throughout the world, is very well known and is having a museum exhibition currently on campus. This exhibition, Jesus of Western Avenue, is what he says will be his final museum exhibition of his career. Tony was also an alumni of the College of DuPage and a close friend with the late Cleve Carney, the namesake of our museum space. Today we'll hear Tony talk about his process, his work, and his connection to the college. Thank you for joining us, and now I'm going to hand things over to Tony.
I was a student at College of DuPage in 1978 and 79, and it was a way different deal than what it is now. I mean, none of this was here. It looked like a big brown rusted warehouse. It looked like nothing so much as an IKEA that they forgot to paint blue and yellow. You could sense, even from that kind of skeletal and humble beginning, this was a place with purpose. I had wonderful theater teachers here. I had Richard Holgate and Jack Weissman, Jody Briggs, Craig Berger, and they each taught me a different thing about acting. Holgate used to tell me, I just want to tie your hands together. He goes, when you need to do is do less. He goes, when you're on stage, you need a little bit of movement. He goes, but when you're in front of a camera, the camera sees everything. You move your eyebrow a quarter of an inch. It's 5 feet tall if it's film. And he placed this incredible emphasis on the idea of stillness. He would make us look at Al Pacino from the first Godfather, Robert Duvall from the same movie, Lee Strasberg, the young Brando. I mean, he was really a stickler for, I want to say method, but he wasn't quite that doctrinaire. He also had a great love for improvisation, and he hated when anybody would meander on stage. He's like, we don't do that in real life. We walk to where we're going, we turn to when we're addressed. He tried to work that into what he called our muscle memory, and this is 1978. I hadn't ever heard that term before. And at the same time, I was taking painting and drawing. I had a marvelous teacher named Pamela Lowry, who was here for opening day, and it just made my day. Another guy named John Lemon, and he taught studio drawing, and we were allowed to bring all of our own objects to draw, but he'd make you move around the room. He'd make you, he'd show us Giorgio Morandi and all these incredible artists who not only rendered well, but also were capable of teaching you how to see. Earlier this year I saw a show at David Zwirner in New York of Morandi and Albers, and you would not think that those two artists had anything in common with each other. Yet they did. Going back to the acting thing, what they both had was this stillness, this moment of contemplation, this moment of concentration that allowed you to stand there and meet the work of art on its own terms. There was something quiet in that work that was, after all of the pandemic and everything, it was refreshing. It was peaceful. And I go back to John Lemon because he was the first guy who ever mentioned these artists to me. When I was a teenager, you watched the guy who painted on Saturday in like half an hour. Okay, he makes some clouds, and you know what? Good for that guy. I mean, I'm sure it brought a lot of people to making art. It's too bad they didn't have guys on Saturday morning drawing Mad Magazine cartoons, drawing the stuff that I was really interested in. Mad Magazine and the comic strip Dick Tracy were my gateway drugs. Yeah, I mean, they were kind of what set me free. Them and nature shows and, you know, anything having to do with birds, you know, which constantly were present in meaningful ways in my life. So I kind of got my compass right at College DuPage in that I decided what I wanted to do with my life and what was worth doing. And I will always be grateful to this school for that.
That's great. And then I'm sure a lot of students watching are curious, after that moment, you get these kind of fires lit.
Well, then I had to spend 3 or 4 years just screwing my life up, you know. I had a pretty negotiable drug problem and did that. And then, you know, just all kinds of stupid shit with, you know, run-ins with the cops and you know, one calamity after the other. My father used to say to me, he goes, you know, first half of your life you couldn't do anything right. He goes, in this half you can't do anything wrong. He goes, you ever gonna find a middle? You know, it's, but yeah, I mean, I went through a lot of jobs. You know, I worked at the Holiday Inn when it was down on Roosevelt Road in Findlay there. And I was a banquet setup man. And it was without a doubt the worst job I ever had in my life. It was, you'd have to carry, you know, 8-foot tables. And at the time I was young and really, really strong. And I had all kinds of jobs, you know. I got fired from more restaurants. I always tried to get restaurant work because they'd feed you. You know, and you could also pilfer food, and you know, you know, you'd have baggies and stuff, and you know, so that was kind of what my life was like. It was rather itinerant and kind of lacked a certain direction. And then I was in a very bad car wreck. I drove into a house, and from that moment on, I realized. It's got to change, you know, and I got very serious about making art. And this was an ongoing kind of battle between me and my father. Finally, I said, look, you know, you need to listen to me, and you know, clean whatever is in your ears out of your ears. I'm going to tell you the only thing I want to do seriously is this, and that's all I'm going to do. He said, well, you're always going to have a job to support it. I said, yeah, you know, I'll have jobs. He goes, you know, he pulled over and he was like kind of half pissed and I think kind of half relieved. He said, okay, then do it like your life depends on it, not one step backwards. That was his way of giving me permission, you know.
And then once that internal decision, what are some of the things that happened along the way that allowed you to start having opportunities? You know, I think students are always curious, like, how do you show your work?
I rented a storefront on Villa Avenue for $75 a month. It was right next to the then shuttered Ovaltine factory and across the street from a bar called Brennan's. And I got the place and I thought, well, I can come here and this is my safe place. I can make art here. I can do whatever I want. And I thought, I'll open a gallery. You know, how hard could it be, right? And we started a little community there. And I'd given a show to this lovely girl who'd gone to Pratt Institute, Linda Federico, who made gorgeous drawings and paintings. And I got to know her and we kind of, you know, grew close, and she told me she was moving back to New York. And so I had a job at the bartending bar and I saved all my money. I was making all these drawings on slate boards, and I was making them because they implied the learning process to me. And the materiality of it was really important back then because every time I'd sit down, it's like I would just ask, just let me learn something, you know? And she said to me, she said, you know, these are really quite good. And I wasn't sure yet. I mean, none of my friends or peer group, none of them were artists, you know? I mean, eventually, slowly but surely, those places, those people got filled in with people who actually made art, you know? So she said, well, you know, I'm going back to New York, come and visit me, you know? And I did about 3 months later, and I had 2 knapsacks with the new invention, bubble wrap, you know, and all my slate drawings. And as soon as I got there, she Dear John my ass, you know. It was like, this isn't gonna work, you're too far apart, I'm already seeing somebody. It's like, of course you are, you're like young and pretty and talented, you know. And weirdly, I wasn't all that broken up by it. I didn't know how it could have been sustainable. So she showed me around some galleries, and this is the East Village in the mid-'80s, and I just looked like a Martian, you know. I mean, this is like post-punk, and but all the dealers I was showing that would take the time to look at the slate drawings would say, you know, I really like this. I just don't know if they're there yet, you know. And so what the hell does that mean, you know? So I went to Washington Square, you know, and I saw these other guys selling their artwork up. Just line up 3 or 4 of them and work on another one, you know. I mean, the slate boards were small enough that I could take a clipboard and draw on them with Prismacolor. So this kid comes walking up, and he's got the really cool glasses, kind of a crew cut, and I can tell this guy's like way more hip than me, you know. And he goes, what do you get for those? And until that moment, I'd never even thought about it. So I thought, you know, I'll swing for the fence. And I'm like, $50. And he goes, I want those 3. And he hands me 3 $50 bills. And I bubble them up for him, and he goes, are you gonna be here tomorrow? I said, yeah, you coming back? He goes, yeah, I'm gonna bring a friend with me, you know? So the next day, there I am, you know? Sure enough, he comes bopping up, and he comes bopping up with like maybe kind of the coolest guy I ever saw in my life, you know, as a black dude with these short braids, and, you know, he's just walking through the park smoking a joint. It's like, you know, it's like nobody can see him or something, you know? And he goes, you got more of these? I said, yeah. He goes, what are you getting? I said, $50. He goes, I want those 2. Do you have more with you? I said, yeah, back where I'm staying, I do, you know? And he gives me the money, and it's like, I got $250. I can eat at a place that's got silverware today, you know? And at that point, I was down to like my last $40, and I had like 3 more days in New York. So they're standing a few feet away, and they're kind of talking, and the one guy goes, you know, there's an easier way to do this than this. And I said, you know, do tell, you know? And he goes, do you got a half an hour? I said, I got nothing but time, you know? So we start walking down 7th Avenue, you know, and it was only a few blocks away, but it took us about a half an hour because every 5 feet, somebody would walk up and air kiss and hug and stuff like this. And I was thinking, I don't know who these guys are, but they're somebody. And finally, we get to a gallery that I'd been to 2 days before. And the lady that was sitting there was the same lady who didn't even look up from her Vanity Fair when I wanted to show her drawing. She goes, we only look at slots, we only look on Monday, you can pick them up on Tuesday. And the same woman, all of a sudden, she's like, you know, practically kills herself getting out from behind the desk, walks up, kiss, 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 kiss. You know, I don't know who these guys are, but they're somebody, you know. It was Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat. And they had no reason to be kind to me at all. They just did it. So she gave me a show 6 months later. It sold out. It got a nice review in the Times. And the last 7 pieces were bought by a movie director named Jonathan Demme, who then became, my lifelong friend. So it's like, I like to tell people that luck is the intersection of preparation and hard work and the music of chance. And all of a sudden I had a career. I went from being a $110 a week bartender plus tips to a contemporary visual artist. And 3 months later I did an album cover for the soundtrack of Something Wild. And about a year later I did the album cover for the Neville Brothers' Yellow Moon. And from then on, I never did anything other than make art for a living. So what I would tell anybody watching this, particularly students, because you find that there are a lot of trapdoors and tripwires and things that can distract you. The most important thing is stay on your mission, stay on your goal. School is for some people, and it's sometimes not for other people. I never really flourished in an institutional kind of framing until now. And I think that was not on the institution, that was not on the schools, that's all on me. It's like, I always had an aversion to being told what to do, or even suggested what to do. The one thing I did know is that once you make the thing your mission and you decide nothing else is nearly as important as this, it becomes a lot easier, I started having shows in New York about every 8 to 12 months. I started getting a lot of press here, and at the same time, I'd gone to work for the radio. I'd gone to work for the Loop. The night I met Jonathan Demme in person, he was seeing a band called the Wooden Tops at the Cat Club at 13th and Broadway in New York. And I recognized him from the press stuff that they'd done for Stop Making Sense, which was fairly brand new. And I walked up to this guy with a beard and glasses, because he was obviously part of the group, and I said, "Is that guy's name Jonathan?" And he just, nods his head. So I walked up and I said, "Hey, Jonathan, my name's Tony. I wanted to thank you for buying my drawings." And he goes, "You the guy who draws on the slate boards?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "They remind me of dangerous American space." I said, "I'll take it," So I was very, very fortunate, but I was ready for something good to happen. And sometimes nothing good happens until you let it. It's odd. I had a show at the DuPage Museum almost 4 years ago, and I swore that was going to be my last museum show. The only reason I had it is my mom was still alive. And I thought, she deserves a victory lap. This is something that'll mean an immense amount to her, Then when Diana called me and told me that this museum was to be named for Cleve Carney, I could not do this, He was quite a guy, He was one of the guys who started collecting me early in my career when I had my studio in Villa Park. And he was never anything but kind, encouraging, generous. When I was a kid, I caddied right up the road here at Glen Oak Country Club. And I used to caddy for his grumpy father, Marv Carney, And I was kind of an in-demand caddy because I had one salient talent, I could kind of read greens because I drew and I understood planes. And these guys all played for money, So it's like, the kid who can read greens, the kid who can save you some time, the kid who can help you putt better, that's your guy, That said, I've never played the silly game in my life, It's like Mark Twain called it a good walk ruined, But that's another place where birds took my hand. Every time you walk onto a golf course, you're walking onto a de facto bird sanctuary. Nothing could shoot them in there, nothing, very, very little in the way of natural predators. So yeah, that place, if any job formed me more than anything, it was that one. You know, you learn all the important stuff, you know, carrying some guy's golf bag around for 4 hours. You learn how to win graciously, how to lose decently. And most important, you learn the really important things in life, like how to drink, how to smoke, and how to tell a proper filthy joke, you know. I learned about how men behave to each other, you know, because a lot of the gambling stuff on the golf course is like borderline predatory, you know, and there's a lot of passive aggressive shit that goes on a golf foursome. I kind of began to understand playwrights like David Mamet, you know, because, you know, we're rotten creatures, man. You know, on this planet, men, we suck, you know, I mean, particularly white men. We're the worst of a bad lot, you know, but I also met some great guys. I mean, I used to caddy for a guy who had a big bank job. His name was Joseph Kinlan. And every once in a while, he just picked the ball up. There you go. I'm just going to walk around. Because, you know, when you're out here, you become cognizant of all the other sounds, the oral landscape, the trains, the birds. He goes, that's kind of why I come out here. Then I used to caddy for a man named Thomas Ayers, whose son was Bill Ayers, who was an activist and labeled as a terrorist. He was part of the Weather Underground. And this is about the time that all of that was kind of happening. And somebody made an untoward remark to him, and Mr. Ayers picked up his golf ball, and we walked back to the clubhouse. And as he was signing my ticket, you know, he paid me for a whole loop, you know. And I said, "Sir, you only played 6 holes. You know, just pay me half." He goes, "No." He goes, "You did your job." He goes, "I can tell you something about this war." He goes, "The people speaking out against it also are serving their country." That's another thing that kind of launched me toward activism. You know, when I was in high school, I had a couple of good teachers who say, you know, decide what kind of people you want to be. You want to come home every day after work, you punch out at 5, sit in front of the TV and bitch at it because you don't like what's going on in the world? Well, be part of the bigger question, or better yet, the solution, or don't be afraid to ask questions of power. And that sounded okay to me. This one came about because the first jazz record I ever got in my life was Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. And something started creeping into my work as a kid that I noticed had a lot to do with jazz. I would kind of know what the figures would be. And then it became more improvisational, you know. My friend, a really great sax player, Frank Catalano, I've heard him play Level Terrace Apart by Joy Division. I've never heard him enter or exit that song the same way twice. And I said, how do you do that? He goes, dude, you gotta keep it fresh, you know? And I think for visual artists, I mean, I think that was a breakout moment for me, you know? I also wanted to emphasize something like tactility, you know, that there are thousands of surfaces on this picture, you know, and they're all acting in concert.
When I look at this, and so many people are blown away by, you talked about the tactile nature and the material. Something that doesn't necessarily translate in the photos of these is that surface.
Yeah.
And also how complex the layering and collage work is.
Yeah,
what is the process of putting these together?
You know, I make what I regard as like the skeleton first, which is the birds, the branches, those three elements in the center, the variations on pinwheel and flora. And then a lot more drawing, a lot more what I consider connective tissue. And I wanted to have rhythm like a jazz song. I want there to be highs and lows, and I wanted to have a little bit of bop, a little bit of pep in its step. All the Humboldt Park birds,
I love this one here.
Yeah. That bird, I actually had contact with that bird. I was sitting on the big stone rock, and there's a stand, and there's a very, very tall, kind of majestic oak tree. And I just looked up, and this guy was looking right back down at me, And it's like, of course, great horned owls hunt there. There's a rat buffet. There's any number of, birds are like people. They go where the food is. They go where opportunity is. But yeah, if I have a favorite from this wall, it may be this one. Or it may be this kingfisher that I made in Florence. And I decided to have some ominous metaphors for Western Avenue as well, like the vultures. The thing is, if you read a natural history of vultures, they're the most useful animals in the world. They're nature's like cleanup service, and I find them magnificently beautiful. I find them majestic, the same way people might find, a bald eagle that way.
Well, having talked to you at the show, I decided a couple weeks ago to walk through the Humboldt Park. I used to live right by it when my first daughter was born.
You should have called me, man. I'm always up for it.
And what I was amazed by is there's these falcons now that live there right around the lagoon, and
they hunt in that lagoon because it's a duck buffet, it's a pigeon buffet, it's like a smorgasbord. No, this I didn't see in Humboldt Park. This is a Dracula parrot. And I only drew it because I didn't know there was such a thing. And then I saw a picture of it. I went, I did my bird nerd deep dive on Google, and I saw this thing, and I thought, God, it looks like the kind of parrot Satan would have, This bird I actually saw in Mississippi Palisades. I don't think anybody's ever seen one in Humboldt, but who knows? The way the planet has changed, you might very well. I mean, they saw a velvet-eared hummingbird in La Baja Woods, which has no business being anywhere north of central Mexico. Yeah. There's a scrub jay, they're out west. I just put them in Humboldt Park because I thought, I'm going to decide what lives in Humboldt Park.
Well, the other thing I noticed in my walk is that, especially it was fall, the park's gorgeous, right? The lagoon, the birds. Yeah. But you're also hearing...
The colors are crazy good right now, You
hear North Avenue, like every box is tagged.
Yep.
There's people who live in the park now in tents, but then there's also like people from, Wicker Park jogging through the park.
The Puerto Rican community goes out there and they cook and they play music, and they give this place this effusive kind of joy, this shot of, just living and loving life. That was just such a joy to do, the mural, because both of those birds I've seen on Glen Oak Country Club, and we wanted to, I know me and Diana went back and forth with this a few times, and I wanted them to be birds that people walk by and go, you know what, I've seen that in my yard, I've seen that by Lake Ellen, I've seen that in the weeping oak trees and the majestic Dutch elms. I mean, one of the things I love the most about Glen Ellen is that they protected their arbor life. When all that stuff was going on with the ash borer and the beetles and the Dutch elm disease, the city fathers called these scientists in from like the Netherlands and places that had dense coniferous forests that were also suffering some of the same fates, and they protected their trees. Justin, I started out mostly drawing and painting, you know, and at a certain point I looked around in the early 80s, and became convinced the world had enough painters, you know, it's like, and I became, that lure back to cartooning and comics had such a pull for me. I just decided that I want to locate my work somewhere in that milieu. You know, I don't want them to literally be comics or cartoons, because I have zero attention span. You know, it's like roses are red, violets are blue. Look at the squirrel. You know, it's like you know, I have the attention span of a housefly. You know, and so I knew that making a coherent body of sequential art, it probably would not be my jam. You know, but I was still, you know, so informed by that. I mean, so informed by like Art Spiegelman, Robert Crumb. I mean, at that time, Raw magazine had just come out, and they kind of kicked the door open, you know. There were two kind of really amazing moments for me. The first time, my hippie aunt took me to the Chicago Images show when I was 13 at the Hyde Park Art Center. I was just absolutely, you know, gobsmacked, you know, because it wasn't like the art I would see in the museum. You know, when my mom would take me on the free days when I was a little kid, she'd take me and see all the Monet and all that. It's like, at that time when I was a kid, I thought that was old lady art. You know, it's like I didn't want to look at that. I wanted to look at Mad Magazine. I wanted to look at comics. I wanted to look. They were beginning to make full feature cartoons like Fritz the Cat and Heavy Traffic and Wizards, and that was the lingua franca that spoke to me. And then, you know, I began writing as well. I began writing poetry and stuff, and for the longest time early on, and it finally came together for me and became cohesive only about 10 or 15 years ago. It's like I wanted, for a long time, my poems and my drawings be the same thing, you know. And I thought there was room for a work of art that had both of those things. Other people have been doing it, you know. When, after I first visited New York and saw a Barbara Kruger show, it's like, yeah, okay, words can be art, you know. There's just so many kind of aha moments that just struck me, you know. The East Village scene, you know, it was so liberating. Artists like Luis Frangella, Martin Wong, Guy Aguirre, Joe Coleman, still one of my best friends to this day. There was a new kind of figuration going on, and a new kind of direction. And I kind of responded to the ethos of the pictures generation. I didn't like all of the work, but I did like making pictures, you know. I still do. I mean, it's still my jam. It's the, you know, every day I go to my studio, I know I get to make something. To me, that's the thing worth doing. The last 3 years put me through real changes, you know. I mean, when we first started talking about this show, you know, 3 years ago, you know, there was no COVID yet. No, we were still stuck in the mire and the muck of Trumpism. But Diane had proposed, you know, a much more kind of modest show, you know. And I said, well, maybe I can get you 40 or, you know, 45 pieces, something like that. And then the pandemic hit. So I would go out to Humboldt Park, and one day I went out there, I realized after I had to close both of my galleries and my studio, shelter in place, I sat down on this big rock next to the geese in the duck pond, and I realized, wow, I no longer have an income, you know. And luckily, my work was still selling pretty well, but there was a lot more responsibility. And you know, my wife had been on me for a couple of years. You got to make jigsaw puzzles. You got to make jigsaw puzzles. So We did that. But something else also happened. I'd be sitting out there and I began to hear the essential musics, the birds, the sound of wind moving through the branches. And it's like I could calm down, I could decompress, I could kind of find my better self in those moments. So I did it for a little while, and then I started telling my friends about it, and we'd gather, The Apostles of Humboldt Park are those guys. They're the guys who walked around the lagoon with me. We got a really good head start on what it's going to be like when we're really old guys. You just sit on the park bench and hold forth with whatever part of the world will hold forth with you, And I think it was an exercise in sanity for all of us. I think, I think those 9 or 10 people really helped me survive COVID.
In so many of your pieces, even though it's a bird or a monster, or either they're serene and celebratory or kind of vicious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But Chicago seems to be a subject.
Yeah,
almost
you bet.
In all of them.
You bet. I'm hypnotized by this city. I wake up sometimes just enraged at the thoughtless cruelty. And make no mistake, Chicago is a profoundly cruel place. At the absolute rampant racism, the way people of color are treated by the police, I just find endlessly lamentable. The classism, the idea that the other person, your fellow citizen, is succeeding at your expense. That's a small sociopathic way to be. And then other mornings I'll wake up and I'll just realize the place is luminous and shot throughout with poetry and grace. And you'll see one neighbor extend a kindness to another, and it's like that's what holds it all together, But Chicago, yeah, it's I love it, I hate it, I need it.
That's perfect. With all the students watching, is there anything you'd want to say directly to them as young artists? Any advice that you'd want to
hang in there and do it. I mean, you get to sleep late. It's a life of constant curiosity, and that's what drives an artist. That's what drives us. I mean, once I got the internet, all of a sudden, it's like everything I used to go to the library and look up, it's like, boom, it's at a keystroke. It's like, so you can learn so much more, so much faster. And don't, even if you want to be a visual artist, make sure you feed that thing. Make sure you read. Make sure you read novels and poetry and read about politics, because it's also about you. And cultivate your voice with as many tools as you can. Some people will go the academic school route, some people won't. That doesn't mean that you're not getting an education. I chose to seek out the education that most served me and nourished my work and my practice. Any given time I'm carrying 2 or 3 books of poetry around with me, and they're kind of life sustaining. They remind me of what's good in us and what's possible. Nikki Deanna Brooks has her new play, Her Honor Jane Byrne, going up, and I'm always amazed that she was able to channel this tough Irish lady from Sauganash, being a black woman from the South Side, but she did it, and she did it because she was curious and she dug deep, and she didn't try for the easy shit. Well, one thing I will tell students: do the hard thing. That's how you grow.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you all for joining us. That was a wonderful way to view your work and to get a peek into your exhibition at the Cleve Carney Museum of Art. I want to mention that the Visiting Artist Series is a collaboration between the Cleve Carney Museum of Art, the Department of Fine Arts, Department of Photography, and the Department of Architecture here at the College of DuPage. Join us for our next Visiting Artist Series lecture on February 10th with Emily Schroeder. You can find more information on our website, theccma.org.